Presentation from the web workshop series focuses on our coping with depression series, specifically identifying your values and how that can be used as a coping strategy to reduce depression symptoms overall. As always, this presentation comes through the Counseling and Psychological Services Office through the IU Student Health Center. We are located on the 4th floor of the IU Student Health Center, and you can call us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, just by dialing 812-855-5711 and select option 1 for our after hours crisis line. Now, the way that today's presentation is going to work is it's going to function super similarly to any of the live or other pre-recorded videos that you have watched or attended before. So what that means is it's going to take about 35 to 45 minutes. Any of these videos really are going to take as long as you need them to take. So if you need to press pause and go on to do something, or if you're wanting to really spend ample time journaling your responses and reflecting on what's discussed in today's workshop, it might take a bit longer. That being said, there are plenty of journal prompts as it allows you just to think further about the material being discussed and being able to just really personalize that to your individual and unique experience. Throughout those times when we will have the journal prompts, I encourage you to actually participate, meaning actually write down your responses on either a computer or your phone or using pen or pencil and a piece of paper. And then to ensure that you have ample time to do this, you will be asked to pause the video so you give yourself enough time to answer those questions, and then you just press play when you're ready to continue. Now, today specifically is going to focus on being able to understand our own cycle of depression because it is a very unique and individualized experience. We want to be able to really question intentionally, how does that depressive experience pull us away from our values? We also just want to identify what values are and begin identifying our personal values and helpful strategies to be able to engage more congruently with them. And again, all of that will be connected to just questioning, how can this help us when we're working to cope with depression symptoms overall, and certainly anxiety and other mental health symptoms too. This can be very helpful for that as well. So bearing this in mind, I like to always ensure that I start out any depression or anxiety related workshop video by just helping us understand depression or anxiety in general. And the reason being is because our experiences with mental health in general are just so unique, and we need to be able to understand what our individual cycles look like and how our thoughts, our feelings, our behaviors, the way our body feels, how all of that can interact together and sometimes make it worse for us, and how all of those symptoms can actually trigger one another and kind of create this very rapid pinball effect. So often I'll have students come in my office and talk about how they just feel like being depressed is this overwhelming mess that's just getting worse and worse and worse. And certainly, again, because of how quickly this can go, it can be really difficult when we're in the middle of it just to pause and step back and really question, hey, what's going on here? And how is everything impacting one another? And how is this either helping me or hurting me overall? So I like to be able to help individuals do this by utilizing what we call the cognitive behavioral diamond. So what that is, and I'll show you that on the next slide, is it's really working hard to break down, okay, what are my thoughts? What are my feelings? How does my body feel? And how am I behaving? And how do all of these things go together and really create that cycle of depression? And now we find that the symptoms of depression overall can bring about some pretty drastic changes in somebody's life. It can change their routine. It can change their behavior. However, we often find that it's the behavioral changes that can actually worsen the depression and the distress overall. And when that worsens, it can prevent an individual from feeling like they can really cope effectively and experience a reduction in symptoms. So I do want you to pause and question, how do your thoughts impact your feelings? And how does that experience impact how you behave overall? Just pause and consider it. If you do want to journal, feel free to press pause and journal your answer to that right now. Otherwise, we'll just continue moving along. So I particularly love this cross-sectional formulation, and this is actually taken from our Anxiety Toolbox workbook, which is one of our 3-week group workshops that we do offer at CAPS, but I think that it can be very, very well utilized with other mental health concerns such as depression, stress, anything else related. So basically what this chart does is it really focuses on us being able to question things specifically from like a situational perspective, meaning asking, okay, wow, I'm starting to feel really overwhelmed or really upset. What was the situation? Where was I? What was going on? What did I feel anxious or depressed about? So on and so forth. And then breaking down what that physical experience was like. Maybe you do experience some physical symptoms of anxiety as well as the depression. Are you finding yourself struggling sleeping? Are you feeling tired a lot? Tension headaches, something like that. What's that physical sensation like? Thoughts. What's going through your mind during this particular situation? Or again, you can also do this more generally. If you're feeling like you can't quite identify yet the situations, just complete the bottom half from more of just a generalized depression related approach. But really question, what types of thoughts do you get caught up with? What thoughts do you find really difficult to let go of? When it comes to depression, it could be shoulds or have tos, or I'm a failure, or I wish I was better at this, or why can't I do this, or nobody likes me, lots of different thoughts. We can bop across the other way and question our emotional experience. I do encourage you, if you struggle with this, Google search an emotion wheel and pull that up, because there are lots, and this goes far beyond just like sadness or numbness, but it can be feelings of like rejection or guilt or shame or embarrassment or, many other emotions of that level. And then behaviorally, when the situation occurred, or just generally, like how do you tend to behave, or what are things that you give up when you're feeling depressed? Again, I think that being able to really go through and break this down and understand your own experience can be really helpful in, number one, helping you identify your depressive triggers. Number two, helping you understand how we might be responding to the depression in a way that's actually perpetuating that distress, causing more distress than helping it. And then determining more helpful behaviors and thoughts overall. Again, we're moving quickly through this, but I find it to be a really vital piece towards coping with depression, anxiety, and mental health overall. So if you'd like to pause and spend more time, feel free to take a screenshot or pause the video and actually complete that cross-sectional formulation model. But we're going to move into our journal questions right away. And the first question is, how does this cycle possibly perpetuate someone's experience with depression? And how do you think this cycle may start to move quickly? As with any of our journal questions, I do encourage you actually participate in this or write down your responses. And you're going to need to press pause on the video to ensure that you have ample time. Once you're finished, just press play and we will continue. The next questions. What are some examples of your depressive triggers? So what are some situations, maybe locations, and get very specific about it. Possible thoughts or memories that trigger that depression, maybe people that you're around. What are some of those triggers? What is the biggest contributor to your cycle of depression overall? So what makes it feel like it's hardest to let go of that depression? Is it your thoughts, your feelings, your behavior? And then what could be a more helpful thought or a more helpful behavior that may actually help slow down your cycle of depression overall? As always, pause the video to record your responses, and when you're ready, press play and continue. Now we're going to start moving into our values piece of it. And you might have already done some of this work through other videos or through your individual counseling work or whatever else that you've done. You might already be able to recognize what your experience is like with depression, your overall triggers, the types of painful thoughts, emotions, and behaviors that are keeping you stuck in this cycle. And while it's really vital that you do spend time asking yourself, okay, what helps? What doesn't help? What don't I want life to look like? We also need to spend time to just pause and question, what do we want life to look like? There can be that big gaping hole of, okay, I know I don't want this. But then we need to question, okay, if I know I don't want that, what do I want instead? That's what we call our values overall. And it can be really helpful in terms of being able to develop insight, to be questioning, how does our current cycle of depression pull us closer or further away from our values? And how might that pulling effect either decrease or increase our distress and depression overall? So as you're beginning to consider your values, here are some important questions to doing that. Asking yourself, who do you want to be? What is important to you in this life? What types of relationships are important to you? And who do you want to be in those relationships? So those value pillars, not only do you want to be a good friend or a good son or daughter or anything else, but what does being a good friend look like? What would make life feel more valuable and meaningful to you? And what type of life do you want to lead? And as always, I know that these are some big questions, and if you do want to spend some time and pause here to answer them, I do encourage you, press pause on the video, record your responses, and press play when you're ready to move on. Now, if we think about depression overall and just like values and why that's important that we kind of focus on those two things together, I just want to pause and really harp on the fact that values are deeply personal. And values are something that might be different or look different than another value of another individual. Another thing with that is you might have the same value. Let's say you and a friend both value education, but the way you value that or the way you participate in that value might look different, and that's okay. But what's important is that you are really working to identify what it is that's important to you. And values themselves are often verbs and adverbs rather than nouns or adjectives. So it might be that you value commitment or you value loyalty. You might certainly value friendship overall, or you value strong, close-knit relationships. But I do encourage you to question, what about those relationships? What does that look like? Dig in deep. Now, when most individuals go to college or graduate school, they're often going into that experience kind of breaking free from those different types of values that might have been instilled in them in their communities or from, their different friend groups or their parents or other family members. And there can be that state of like kind of cognitive dissonance between when we're identifying, hey, here's how I was raised, and this might actually be different than what I actually think, feel, and believe. So when we're starting to question your identity and your values overall, a great way to do that is just by asking, who are we outside of who our parents, our community, our friends, or our society told us to be? And the best way to identify a value is just to ask yourself, if no one knew you were doing it, would you still do it? Would it still be important to you? So, your parent might have told you to make your bed every single day. This is going to be a really silly example, but questioning, if your mom didn't know you were making your bed every day, would you still do it? Would that still be important to you? Being able to really pause and question that can help kind of discern the difference between what our value actually is and what that value might be of another person. Again, values are really important when we're attempting to cope with and reduce depression, as it can be your guiding light forward. It can be your why, as to, okay, great, I need to know why I'm attempting to engage in these cognitive strategies, why I'm attempting to behave differently. If we can connect that to a value, if we can connect it to a why, here's why I'm doing this. It can be a lot easier to challenge ourselves to do something that's hard if we know that it's leading us to a place that is going to make us feel more congruent, that is going to possibly make us feel better or have reduced symptoms overall. It can be really helpful to connect that to a why, and a great why can just be a value or a goal overall. So being able to really challenge ourselves to gain the insight to question, how does this behavior align with the life I'm wanting to lead, align with that value, align with that goal? So we're going to pause and question. And again, this values work is really big and can be really difficult overall. So this is just the tip of the iceberg. But I want you to question, what does a value mean to you? And how does that value differ from a goal? And goals and values are different. I like to think of a goal as being a roadmap that you are actually on your way to engaging in that value, and it gives you an indication that you are. But they're not always the same thing. So how do you think that differs for you? And what beliefs do you currently hold that are of your own creation? As always, pause the video, record your responses, and when you're ready, press play, and we can continue. Now, you might be feeling really overwhelmed by this, and that's okay. Values are a very broad, vague, and also big topic that's hard to identify. And so we're wanting to just kind of chip away at this piece by piece and begin just opening our minds up to being able to question how identifying our values can be a helpful strategy in coping with our depression overall. So again, essentially, values are able to provide you the roadmap for making changes to your life. So a value helps you identify who you want to be, the way you want to live, and what you stand for. So again, very broad. It might be, I want to be a purposeful, committed, and intentional person. And we can ask ourselves, what does that mean? What does that look like? That's where we're putting those values into purposeful everyday action by using those goals and those strategies. So if you want to be a committed person, what does that look like today? What would you need to do differently? How can you move yourself 1% closer to that value? What's a goal that you can engage in or a strategy that you can use? By taking that very purposeful everyday action, by engaging in those goals and those strategies, that can help us feel more aligned with who we want to be, what we want life to look like, which can overall help reduce some of those depression symptoms. So take some time to journal. In what ways does your depression make it difficult for you to engage congruently with your values? And what would you need to feel equipped to engage more congruently with your values today? So what would you need right now to feel like you could engage more congruently today? Again, really focus on the here and the now. Take some time, record your responses, and when you're ready, press play and we'll continue. Now, again, identifying our values is a really big thing. And what I really like to encourage people to use is to use this. It's called a values bullseye, and it's actually taken from Dr. Russ Harris. And you can access it at www.thehappinesstrap.com. Dr. Russ Harris engages in this theory called acceptance and commitment theory, which focuses a lot on values and how that can be helpful in reducing symptoms overall. And this values bullseye, essentially, there's a lot more to it, but we're just going to take that bullseye piece to it, which is basically asking ourselves, okay, in each of these domains, my work, education, leisure, my relationships, my personal growth and health, how am I either living fully congruently with my values or inconsistently? And we're able to use a bullseye. So the closer you get to the center, that means you're living fully by your values. And the further away means you're being a bit more inconsistent in your engagement with them. So what I do encourage you to do is you can pause the video, question this, maybe visit that website and actually complete one of these values bullseyes yourself, but just really question, where are you at in each of these domains? And you might need to break each of these domains down further because they're really big and really broad, but we want to have a conceptualized idea of where am I at versus where would I actually want to be? And again, begin to just continue to question what are those things that I value overall? What does engaging with a work and education value actually look like for me? So on and so forth. Now, what's really important to focus on is just this idea of 1% at a time, not 100%. So humans are hardwired to engage in this common cognitive distortion called all or nothing. And what I mean by that is it's like we believe that we have to do something 100% or all of the way, or we can't do anything at all. So it might make us feel like we're total failures or total winners, but there's no in between. Either we're smart or we're dumb, we're depressed or we're happy. Either we live fully congruently or not congruently at all. So this can come up a lot when I'm working with students with their values work of this, holy cats, I'm not engaging with my value at all. I'm totally on the outside of that value bullseye, and I need to jump all the way to the center. That's a massive jump, and that's a lot of added pressure that can actually cause you to retreat back into that depression-related cycle. So as we're focusing on this is to notice when that all or nothing, that desire to jump in 100% of the way is coming up, and instead challenge yourself to take it 1% at a time. So what is something that I can do today that's going to move me 1% closer to the life I want to lead? How can I engage with this value 1% more congruently? Again, you're going to want to jump in 100% of the way, but I want you to notice when that comes up and really work to break that distortion down and question, isn't being 1% closer to your value better than no percent closer. So again, it's going to be tempting as you're sitting here identifying this and you're noticing that incongruence and noticing that dissonance to want to just uproot all of your behaviors at once. But it's not sustainable, nor is that possible. So again, I just want you to encourage breaking it down 1% at a time. If 1% doesn't feel quite enough for you, bop it up to 5% or 10%. That's okay too. But again, we want to kind of break this down step by step, piece by piece. So question, if you're closer to the outside of that circle, what is something you can do today that's going to move you one step closer to your value? What can you do that allows you to feel just a tiny bit more engaged? Great. Now, what can you do tomorrow, in the next day or the next week or the next month? And break it down piece by piece. So as you're thinking about your values, I want you to journal the following. Consider what's important to you and how actively you're engaging with that value today. What is one way you can engage 1% more with that value? What is one small change you can make that will allow you to move a bit closer to the person you want to be or the life you want to lead? So again, really breaking that down step by step, piece by piece. As always, pause the video to record your responses, and when you're ready, you can press play and continue. Now again, that was just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to values overall. But what we're hoping to do is to identify how our values can be helpful in allowing us to slow down and pause. How does our cycle of depression actually pull us away from that life we want to lead or that person we want to be? And how can we be more purposeful and intentional with noticing times when we can maybe choose thoughts or behaviors that align a bit more closely with that value or that goal overall? If you're finding this helpful, but you're wanting to break it down further, there are plenty of options for you to do that by seeking out other resources, either individual counseling, group counseling. We have some great group counseling resources that talk about this more in depth. Some of our 3-week groups do a great job going into that too. You can look at books or other resources, but I do encourage you to continue asking yourself, how can you broaden or expand on the work that was discussed today? Now, certainly you might be noticing that maybe you are wanting an additional service. Here's some great ways to figure out whether or not additional services are needed at this time. Could be an increase in other mental health symptoms like depression, anxiety, trauma, PTSD, so on and so forth. Any changes in your personal functioning, like changes in your sleep, your appetite, your hygiene, reduced academic or social functioning. Maybe you're not going to class. Maybe you're not socializing as much, going to work, something related. Maybe you're going to work, but you're engaging in work differently. Again, whatever reduced functioning looks like for you. And then, of course, any thoughts of hurting yourself, hurting other people, self-harm, thoughts of suicide, thoughts of homicide. Those are all good indicators that it would be time for you to give us a call and seek out additional services. Now I'm going to just briefly touch on the different services that are offered overall. Again, this resource comes from the Counseling and Psychological Services Office, or we go by CAPS. We offer individual, couples, and group counseling. Now, in light of COVID-19, most of those services will be remote, but I do encourage you, please always check our website to ensure that you have the most up-to-date information about how our services or resources are impacted in light of what our students are needing or the current concerns with any global pandemics or so on and so forth. So again, we can offer, video or phone services, and that telehealth will even continue when we're able to continue offering in-person appointments. And then when things are opening back up, we'll have in-person options too. For individual couples or group counseling, we always have after-hours crisis and emergency appointments available. Again, in light of COVID-19, all of those will be virtual. So what that means is between the hours of Monday through Friday, 8 until 4:30, if you're experiencing an emergency, you can give us a call, 812-855-5711, and you will automatically see somebody for that teletherapy emergency appointment. When we're back to providing services in person, that will be available for you via a physical emergency walk-in appointment, just by coming to the 4th floor of the IU Student Health Center and letting them know that it's an emergency and you'd like to see someone quickly. Now, after hours, you dial that same phone number, but you select option 1, and that's available for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if you're experiencing a crisis at 2 in the morning on a Sunday, early morning, what you're able to do is just give us a call, and that resource is still available for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we don't want anybody to ever feel like they have to fester with their concerns or with that emergency, and that they're able to seek that resource out sooner rather than later. And certainly you can always call 911 or access your local emergency room for other crisis options too. CAPS also has some free drop-in appointments, which we'll talk about later. Again, emergencies are always best served at our emergency walk-in appointments, whether that's telehealth or physically in person. We do offer sexual assault crisis counseling and other free workshops, just like this one, a pre-recorded one. We have some live versions, mindfulness, and lots of other great resources. Again, the best place for you to go to get the most up-to-date information is always going to be our website, so I do encourage you to check that out. Now, our Let's Talk program is our multicultural outreach program, and it focuses on being able to serve our traditionally underserved student populations. Let's Talk Now. During typical semesters, what this would be is we would have several clinicians going around to various sites on campus. You would be able to just access the website, check out where they're located, who's there, what hours, and you just show up and you start talking right then and there. Now, again, please check our website, because in light of COVID-19, a lot of those services will be altered or limited because of needing to provide things remotely. But that's a wonderful option if it's not an emergency, but you're wanting to talk through something right then and there. That could be a great option. Let's Keep Talking is formal counseling that's targeted at serving our traditionally underserved students. This is located at various culture centers around campus: Asian Culture Center, La Casa, Neil Marshall, Group Scholars, OIS, DEMA. Now, in light of COVID-19, students who still identify with those culture centers can still get counseling services from that primary counselor, but it will be offered remotely. And then when things open back up, what you would do is be able to actually seek services at that culture center rather than coming into CAPS. You call CAPS to schedule that appointment and continue to check our website for the most up-to-date information. Now, before I go on to this, what's super important to mention is you might be feeling overwhelmed, like, oh my goodness, there's so many services. And you're right, there's tons of services, and you don't need to necessarily know exactly what it is that you're needing or what service option is going to be the best fit for you. Instead, if you're wanting to just be able to get the ball rolling and talk more with somebody about what it is that you're looking for, what's been coming up for you, you can dial our number 812-855-5711 and get in touch with our front desk workers, and they will get you scheduled for a free 30-minute appointment where you and that counselor are going to work through understanding what's coming up for you and what it is that you're looking for, and they'll make some recommendations for you about what treatment options through CAPS or in our campus or local community might be able to serve your needs best. Now, as we continue to branch off into just how robust our services are, we do have sexual assault crisis services. The acronym is SACS. This is free counseling services for anybody who has experienced an assault. Includes but not limited to all of those things listed. So if you're wanting to communicate about this and you're wanting some of your therapy work to focus on any of those things or anything trauma related, we do have specially trained counselors to be able to meet those needs. What that means is all of these counselors, they work for CAPS, but they work under what's called SACS. And what that means is they are trauma informed. They have specialized training in being able to work with individuals who have experienced sexual violence, sexual assault, or trauma of that nature. Those services include individual and group counseling, as well as couples counseling, support groups, psychiatry care, information and assistance with medical, judicial, or legal issues. And they also have their own after-hours emergency line. Please note this line is different than CAPS's line as well. It is 812-855-8900, and that's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And as always, these services are available for all genders and all identities. Again, if you're unsure if that could be a good fit for you, that initial 30-minute appointment is going to be a great space for you to explore that with a clinician, and we'll be able to help you identify what resource might be the best fit for you. Now, outside of CAPS, on IU's campus, there's another wonderful counseling service called the Center for Human Growth. So if you're wanting to just explore what other counseling options you can get from IU Bloomington's campus, this is a great place to start and call as well. You can visit their website for the most up-to-date information or give them a call to determine what types of services and resources they're offering at this point and what their availability looks like. Again, there are some similarities with their center to ours and certainly some differences, so I do encourage you to explore that overall. Now that's everything that I have for you for today's presentation. I do encourage you to continue to visit our website, follow us on any of our social media sites to ensure that you are getting the most accurate and up-to-date information. If you're wanting to continue to gain more psychoeducation, logging on and participating in any of our pre-recorded or live versions of these web workshops could be a really helpful space for you to get some good strategies and some good psychoeducation.